Access All Areas, episode 183, and we're going straight off the top, B. We're not going to go into what we do and what we do. We're just going to get straight into it and say, welcome to a bunch of swing fans. We won't call them swingers, B, okay? You were looking at me that way. But we're going to talk and welcome a bunch of swing fans to our first Zoom Access All Areas catch-up in at least about 18 months. We're going to welcome all the way from Tasmania, okay, Brett Williams.
Thank you. I suspect I'm your only Tasmanian patron.
That could be true. I think you might be a good Collingwood fan too, is that right?
Don't mind the woods.
That's right. All the way from Perth, we're going to welcome Darren Joseph aboard. Welcome aboard, Darren, and coming onto our podcast.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Hayden. Thanks, B. Thanks for having me. Yes, I'm over in Perth.
We also welcome back an old friend of the podcast. He's live from his chiropractic, a recent winner of the Hall of Fame tickets, Dr. Jim. Hello, Dr. Jim.
Good evening, and thank you once again. Great to see you guys, and thank you for the ticket. I'm stoked.
Absolutely. I'm joined by my compadre, B. Great to see you again. We haven't recorded for 2 weeks. We did our Jon Stevens episode, literally only, on the last episode, which I think went out pretty well for people and gave a bit of an update. How are you? I won't ask how your INXS week's been, but how have you been, B?
I've been good. I've got lots to tell you behind the scenes later. I've been speaking to some INXS security guard from the 19...
Okay.
Or something like that. So that will be some juicy things that we'll talk about another time. But Darren Jones also going to be coming along later on as well.
Yeah, Darren's been a previous guest of ours. He worked quite close with the band around the year 2000 when they were sort of transitioning from life post-Michael to life with Jon Stevens. And he's going to be joining us for this episode too, which we're really happy about. But it is 40th anniversary of the Swing album, which was released in early April 1984. We would love to, maybe throw to Brett first and just tell us about your love for INXS and particularly the Swing album, Brett.
Okay, well, like I say, it's been 40 years. I'm 55, so I guess you can do the sums out pretty easily. But it's an interesting one because I think it's the first album I ever bought, and it's also still my favourite album after all these years. So I think hand on heart, I can say that's the case. And I've got some great albums, and obviously INXS have got some great albums. But when it's some of my favourites, I think it's probably one of those things that you talk about, the songs that you get least sick of.
Yes.
Things on the kick, like sometimes... Yeah, they got played to death, but I don't ever get sick of any songs on the Swing. I think actually Don't Change was the first song I heard. I used to have a mate used to walk around with a Ghetto Blast, used to play Satisfaction and Don't Change when I was about 13. I thought I really liked that. Original Sin came out, and when you talk about kissing a girl, I actually kissed a girl the first time I heard of Original Sin. I remember that. Then Send a Message came out, and then I bought the album, and then it was I was away. So just playing on a shitty old gramophone back in those days at my grandfather's house, but just couldn't stop listening to it.
You're based in Tassie. You always been in Tassie, even back then when this album sort of came out for you and things? Yeah,
so it was tricky because they toured here at the start of the release of Listen Like Thieves, but Swing is very much zeitgeist, to use one of your terms, and it was just one of the greatest experiences of my life. And they played it at West Point Casino 3 nights in a row.
Yeah,
I went the first night. My girlfriend had tickets for the second night. She went into the concert 5 minutes, came out. I took her ticket and went back in, never came back out again, and that was the end of our relationship. But it was worth it. It was worth it.
So what made her? She left the concert after 5 minutes.
Well, you had back in those days, you didn't scan tickets. You had a ticket.
Oh, okay.
You got to pass out. She gave it to me. Yeah. I said, I'll go in and have a look, and that was. I never came back out.
Yeah. So
I don't think she.
And again, not being ageist there, but I'm thinking about that Listen Like Thieves touring around there would have been about 86. So does that put you around 17, 18, roughly at that point?
No, I was younger than that. I was 86. I reckon it was 80.
Well, Listen Like Thieves came out at the end of 85. So if they were touring Listen Like Thieves album, I reckon it was sort of maybe 80.
It would have been 86. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
So I just got a job. I do.
Yeah. It's that sweet spot, isn't it, where music, you're forming your interest, and obviously the double, Listen Like Thieves came out, but the Swing was still in the charts for over 2 years. So they crossed over, as you said, yeah?
Yeah, no, that's sure did. It was in one of the most amazing nights. But there's a website that lists the
set list, the Set List FM.
Yeah, and where they played. And actually, if you look that up, those concerts are actually listed as the Kingborough Sports Centre, which is actually where the Jack Jumpers / Devils used to play.
Oh, okay.
But it wasn't. It was actually at West Point. So it's actually that's an error. And they played 3 nights in Hobart, and then the fourth night they played in Launceston.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you went to 2 of the gigs, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Is it in here?
It might be. Yeah, it could be. Yeah.
What date we're looking at?
Oh, late 86. What do we think, Hayden? 86?
Yeah, I think Listen Like Thieves, they would have been touring in late 85, 86. Think of it, Australian Made was the end of 86, but I reckon they had that Listen Like Thieves till early in that, because Rockin' the Royals was late 85. It was taking some to listen like these material. They toured 86 a lot around Australia and then America.
I'm looking for Hobart. Yeah.
He's got a gigography booklet of INXS looking it up.
I saw Australia Mate too.
Whoa.
Right.
Stood up all day and I got so tired. I mean, Jimmy Barnes come on. I'm not a massive Jimmy Barnes fan. I remember I sat down because I couldn't sustain it any longer.
Yes.
But the adrenaline, I still remember the adrenaline taking over when INXS came on. I was away again. So
Did they do Australian Made in Tassie, or did you come over to Melbourne for that?
that I did it at footy over King George's fifth.
Okay. As well, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was actually the first concert. That was the first one.
Okay.
Yeah. Entertainment Centre, I've got, they did 3 shows in the 28th.
That's correct. But on the website it says Kingborough Sports Centre, which is actually incorrect. That's right.
Okay, Entertainment Centre. Yeah, they've got it right here.
Yeah.
So yeah, the
And I think
28th,
concerts
29th and 9th.
the fourth night. Is that right?
What dates, B, have you got there?
I've got the 28th, 29th and 30th of August in 1995.
1980.
Oh, actually,
No.
Hobart 3, and then they did Launceston at the Velodrome.
That's right.
What
Yep.
year?
That's right.
Say the year again, B. I think
85.
85. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. So it's a couple of months after, the album came out.
Yeah.
All right. Excellent. Darren, we'll throw to you all the way over in Perth, but sunny Perth, one of the most isolated cities in the world. I happened to live there for 3 years. What part of Perth are you from, Darren?
So I live up north of Perth. Over in Perth, we have north of the river or south of the river, and neither shall the two collide.
Yes. A bit of rivalry.
There is a bit, but I'm now moved up to Alkimos, so I'm about 300 metres from the ocean, and loving that lifestyle. It's a little bit further out, but
Are you up Queen's Rock Way or?
yes. So just past Queen's Rocks. Yep,
Yeah, not far from Joondalup.
that's right. Yep.
Yeah,
So that's our
awesome.
neck of the woods. But I'm originally from Melbourne, so I grew up in Melbourne until I was about 28. Yeah, I used to see INXS obviously at Festival Hall, and I went to Australia Made in Melbourne.
Fantastic.
So some good experiences there, and also they played like the Tennis Centre or something in Melbourne as well. Saw them.
They played there for the Kick Tour and then also X Factor Tour and things as well.
Yeah, they did. I saw both of those.
And just before I get into the Swing album, I also got free tickets to Dogs in Space premiere in Burke Street there. So I was up the top of the steps when Michael came up. Yeah, as you do when you're young, you sort of pat them on the back, and I don't know what else are you going to do. You got a signature. It was actually an ex-girlfriend who kept that. I don't know what happened to that. It's probably worth something now. And then we saw the movie, and Richard was there, and Michael. They sort of did a bit of a hello, welcome. This is our movie. We hope you enjoy it. Blah blah blah. And yeah, we watched the movie. It was good. That's about as close as I got to any of the band members though.
Fantastic. How in Melbourne did you grow up?
In the Dandenongs. So I grew up in Monbulk, for those who know Victoria a little bit.
Yeah.
And went to school in Mount Evelyn.
Croydon, Ringwood area, so I knew some people up in the hills, not far from there.
Yeah. The school I went to actually in year 10, so that's 84.
Yeah.
They go to Central Australia every year with the school.
Yeah.
And I remember going on the Central Australia trip. We were all on a bus, and we were in the middle of Alice Springs at this point in time, which is the middle of Australia. Walked into this cafe there, and there was a few of us from the school, from the class, and there was this jukebox in the corner, and I walked over and I thought, I want to play a song while we're waiting for our lunch or whatever it was, and I sent a message by INXS on there, put my $1 coin in or $2 coin or whatever, but it wouldn't have been $2, $1, and then played. Obviously, I knew who INXS were because of Shabu Shabar, and in my mind there's a few songs off that, and even Just Keep Walking was played a little bit in Australia as well. It got a bit of airplay, but everyone just really enjoyed that vibe of that I Sent a Message, and to be technically in the centre, well, not quite, but almost the centre of Australia, in Alice Springs playing I Sent a Message, it was cool, and we played it a few times and just have that connection with that song. And that's what I find with a lot of the music with INXS. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, is that anchoring point of where you were at that point in time in life, or whether you were chasing a girl or vice versa, or a guy, or just a memory or something. I actually revisited your podcast on the Swing review, which was
Probably episode 7 or something like that.
and just the complexities of the album is just amazing. It's just, for me personally, it was like 5 songs that just jumped out that just really, really catchy. Similar to what you've said a few times, Hayden, about INXS and their albums. As you get older, you sort of listen to it with a different perspective, and the production of the Swing was so far removed for the positive compared to Shabu Shabar. Jon's percussion and drums just lifted.
I think we got Nick Launay on that episode, a double episode, where we really sort of probably went into that side a little bit, and he'd come off with the Models and particularly Midnight Oil on a couple of their albums. And look, Tim Ferriss has said this almost slightly as a criticism. He sort of said, look, maybe sometimes the swing, I think back to it, maybe was overproduced. And to some degree it was overproduced, but it was overproduced, I sort of think, in a good way, because it wasn't that post-synthy era where the keyboard was sort of becoming this new sort of attraction for producers and artists, and they could do all sorts of things. And it was only 2 years before you had bands like Human League and Eurythmics and some of this sort of stuff really take off. And obviously a lot of us know Pseudo Echo around that time were probably one of the biggest bands in the country, and they had their big keyboards going. It was
this album's got lots of hooks, hasn't it?
Oh yeah, there's lots of little sort of computer wizardry stuff. So when you go to this like these, which is more raw guitar, stripped back a little bit, they are quite two interesting albums. And often a band will do what you call a reaction album to an album before. And what I mean by that is that REM came out with Automatic for the People. And then they said, you know what, we really want to go loud. And they did Monster and revved up their guitars. So often you see bands do the opposite. You know, the Beatles had this very tricky sort of Sgt. Pepper's, and they go, look, Ringo hated Sgt. Pepper's. He goes, listen, I just want to go back to being in a band. So they had the White Album come out. And I think Listen Like Thieves and The Swing have this symbiotic relationship because they're very poles apart in production between Chris Thomas and Nick Launay. So it's an interesting point you sort of raised there, Darren.
Yeah, I think like I almost feel sorry for the cover bands if they're doing anything from that album, because there's just layers of violin, there's layers of percussion, there's layers of drums, and then there's just this noise of this going through it on different parts of the songs. It's sort of like there's 12 things going on with every song. It's interesting.
We'll dive deep on those 5 songs. I'm very keen to find out what they are. But is one of those Johnson's Aeroplane, or was that out of your 5?
That would be, Johnson's Aeroplane.
Because that's quite a tricky song where you got that very orchestral violin thing sort of going sort of throughout that. But happy to explore that a little bit later. But that's probably an example of the production side being quite unique.
Dancing on the Jessie has got the orchestra at the beginning.
Yeah. Dr. Jim, tell us about your experience and your relationship with the Swing album. Where were you? What did it mean to you? Was it something you discovered at the time of recording, or was it more a bit later on? Where does it sit for you?
I can't say that the Swing was my favourite album, even looking back, but I do remember like Burn For You, like that hook sound, like that real kind of synthy sound. I remember that song quite, and also I Sent a Message was a big songs I remember listening from when I was younger. And what was I think grade 5, Albert Park Primary School. I remember that. I remember with kids playing. And
Jim's the youngest of the blokes on this call today. So you would have been, without giving your age away, so if you're grade 5, you're probably turning 11 that year, roughly. So again, you're emerging into music, but understanding it, being sort of part of it. I think you're 13, 14, 15, 16 of those formative, really like, that's my band and that's what I'm into, and we don't like that band, we love this band. You get become an opinionated music critic at 13 to 16, I reckon, that stays with you for your life.
Yeah.
So we get even for Brett goes, bars, and put him to the left and, the Swing to the right, Yeah, so over the journey, tell us about the Swing for you since those days.
I think, when you think about the Swing, it's one of those albums where INXS, I think, launched internationally. Even though they were doing stuff with Shabu Shabar previously, it was the connection to, intentional, deliberate with Nile Rodgers, where I think they had a plan, they had a vision. I remember Philip Mortlock and Nick Egan saying that they wanted INXS to be this band that was, you didn't know where they were from. They weren't an Australian band like a Men at Work coming out with Kangaroos, right? They wanted to have this kind of international feel, and I think the connection to Nile Rodgers was that kind of launch pad, especially, the guy was working with David Bowie prior.
I think what happened, a witnessing point of view here in Australia at the time, they went from sort of said this alternative sort of emerging live band, with under the Mark Obert's, production, to crossing over a little bit into the mainstream with the number 1 single in Original Sin here, and then they had 2 number 3 singles following up with Send a Message and Burn For You, and then I think Dance of the Jetty went 39. But the album was so big here that at the time Eon FM, which it was called, not Triple M, would play all songs on the radio. Like the song The Swing was played a lot because it was sort of the eponymous sort of title track. But I remember as a kid hearing that on the radio a lot and hearing what I say and, all the voices and, melding in the song. I mean, it was hard as a kid to even know what a single was. We just heard all of the songs, which was actually quite interesting in the sense it wasn't like the 4 or 5 main singles. There was only 10 tracks on the album. It's actually their smallest album in terms of tracks. I think content time, it goes for, it goes 40, 45 minutes plus, but there's only 10 songs on it. But, I remember 8 or 9 of them regularly being on the radio at that particular time. Do you remember that, Darren, from your...
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was, as you said, they played quite a lot of the songs. It was very familiar for us here in Australia. And yeah, the swing, I love that song. In fairness, you probably, when you're younger, you appreciate the song for how, like, what you associate it with or where you were or how it made you feel. You don't really listen to the lyrics.
No.
Yeah.
Like, there's a few of the songs that you mentioned in the deep dive about the album where you say it's a little bit political or a little bit, coming from a certain angle, and I'm going, is it? I just thought it was about, whatever.
Well, yeah. I mean, when we went back to do our review and a few different things there, you're right. Even the band said it was their most political album. If you think that even the original Sin itself is really, an Adam and Eve type, biblical sort of reference.
Yeah.
Dancing on the Jetty, Watch the World Argue is that, for what it is. All the voices was linked to the strike-bound film clip. It was really about the miners' strike here in Australia, but also resonated with the miners' strike in the north of England at that time. Yeah, there was quite a lot of, political references and things like that sort of within. But yeah, the older you get, sometimes you go back and look at the lyrics, and that's the great thing about music. Sometimes a song's lyrics can resonate with you. Like, I'm just looking down here with Dr. Jim, I'm Just a Man. I don't think any of us really appreciated what that song was in 1997 to what it means to us all now in 2024. Knowing what happened with Michael, and you go back and look at the lyric and what it meant, and it was very autobiographical, and sometimes lyrics can elevate a song to make it even more likeable years later because you actually know what the motivation for the singer was. Like, look at a song like Imagine John Lennon. I mean, it's a pretty
heavy song,
powerful lyric still, isn't it? Without getting political here, we've just, come off a very horrible weekend here in Australia, and even yesterday in Sydney, where we've just had these awful crimes, and stabbings and things in Sydney, and then another one happened last night, and it's just not Australia to endure that. And you think of something like John Lennon, you just go, geez, the world doesn't really learn from its mistakes, does it? The protestations of, common sense. But straightening up a little bit, B. Now, I won't assume too much, but I know Listen Like These was a little bit your forerunner, as we know, into your INXS fandom. But did you sort of discover the swing a little bit later on, having worked your way back through the catalogue? Because I guess, obviously, being in England, it wasn't an album that really took off there,
No. So, yeah, I would have gone Listen Like Thieves, then Kick, and then gone back to the swing because I've sort of run out. So I had to have more music that way.
Yeah.
I feel a little bit under pressure here with all the Melbourne boys, even though you're in Hobart, Brett. You're from Melbourne. It's quite nice being with all you Aussie men. It's quite nice.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, it's good. But yeah, I'm from England, probably a little bit older than you guys as well. So yeah, I was 18 and listening to a lot more music as well. Because international England, this album wouldn't have been on my list, if you know what I mean. I would have probably been, Human League, like you say, or U2 and the Smiths and things like that. I used to always go underground and find out all the old albums. So yeah, this album, I loved it. I mean, Original Sin, right off there, funky. And the fact that it's still the album that was the last album that they all co-wrote together. Is that right, I believe?
Well, it was probably the last time I think they all were really living in each other's sort of socks and things like that. So if you go back and look at a lot of the writing, you're seeing, interestingly, you got some co-writes with John and Tim and Michael, and then you got some, I think, with John and Michael and Kirk. Then you're starting to see an Andrew-Michael offshoot, and then there's the odd one with just Andrew. Yeah, once you go into Listen Like Thieves and Kick and X, you really see a lot more stuff really with Andrew and Michael sort of driven. But I guess, just bringing it back to sort of the intentions of the time, I mean, this was an album that should have really broken them in America in a bigger way, and it should have broke them across Europe in a bigger way. Ironically, for all the success they had with this album, I mean, they've sold over 500,000 copies probably in Australia, and they've sold over 1 million in America of it. But most of those copies were sold in the first 12, 18 months after Kick got released. So what happened was in America when Kick, was going berserk, the record buying public were going back and diving deep on a lot of albums that had come out previously. Now, maybe The Sly Thieves was a hit album over there, but if you look at the accreditations in a lot of the chart sort of certifications there, The Swing, I think, got accredited as a platinum selling album in America in 1989 or something like that, which means it sold 1 million units. But 700,000 or 800,000 of those probably came after Kid got released, as people went back and dug the back catalogue and things like that. And there's no reason when you listen to the album to sort of listen to it and go, well, how couldn't have this taken off in America, you know? And unfortunately, what happened, you know, really one of the hallmarks was that the lyric to Original Sin was the thing that held back radio stations here and held back management over there, and the Dream On White Boy, Black Girl type thing. As we've said before, you know, there was a guy in a crowd threw a gun on stage at one of the concerts. Yeah, the song Original Sin was that springboard. It went number one in France, number one in Argentina. If it had have been a big hit in America, translated into more English markets, but it stiffed at 58. Sent a message, and it got released when number 80, and then that was it for America. Yet it kept still selling by the truckloads here in the Southern Hemisphere.
Do you think this was one of the first Australian albums that so many film clips made for each song? So I think, other than perhaps The Swing and Face the Change, I think they almost had every song had a film.
Yeah, The Swing and the Other Stories was the video that got released, I think, in 84, which most of the videos are on. I think there's 7 or 8 videos, but you're probably right. And that could only help in advertorial circumstances with MTV at its peak at that particular time. You know, in 1984, you know, MTV had been 18 months old. Yeah, it was just a weird scenario why I remember at the time, you know, thinking, you know, like, this band are becoming my band and I love them. And I remember trying to look at any little snippet in the paper about how the song was going in America, and remember reading that an issue, you know, regarding its racial tension with its lyrics that curtailed a lot of the promotion and a lot of stuff there. I mean, a song like Tasted off Welcome to Wherever You Are got banned, and then The Gift got banned in America, film clip with the Jesus and the crucifixion and things like that. So ironically, when Madonna got things banned, they became number one. When INXS got banned, they never translated to sales, you know, because they always had to have everything in their corner to make them sort of available to the earballs and the eyeballs of the public.
It's like when John Lennon said, "We're bigger than Jesus."
Yeah, that's true.
And they burnt their albums.
Television is more popular than Jesus. I might have got away with it. You know, but I just happened to be talking to a friend. They used the word Beatles as a remote thing, not as what I think, as Beatles as though those other Beatles like other people say it. I just said they are having more influence on kids and things than anything else, including Jesus. But I said it in that way, which is the wrong way. Yep.
Well, some teenagers have said and have repeated your statements that the Beatles, I like the Beatles more than Jesus Christ. What do you think about that?
Well, originally I was pointed out that fact in reference to England, that we meant more to kids than Jesus did, or religion at that time. I wasn't knocking it or putting it down. I was just saying it as a fact. And it is true, especially more for England than here. You know, but I'm not saying that we're better or greater or comparing us with Jesus Christ as a person or God as a thing or whatever it is. You know, I just said what I said and it was wrong or was taken wrong, and now it's all this.
All right, so maybe we'll throw out just some questions regarding some of the songs that still resonate. And I might throw to you, Darren. You seem like you had a list of 5 earlier that still connect with you to this day.
Yeah, sure. So as I mentioned, like I love The Swing as a song on its own. Dancing on the Jetty, absolutely loved. Like even A Burn For You, of course, that was. But if we're talking about sort of less mainstream ones, I mean, even Melting in the Sun, I don't think B was a big fan of that one from memory. That's okay. Something that was interesting when I was listening to the album again, and even your review, as I mentioned, was I reckon that they got the intro right on most of these songs really, really well. If you listen to it, the intro part, the lead up to each of these songs on the Swing album is unbelievable. It's really well put together, and it builds you up to a point and it goes bang into the song, which is really cool.
The swing is good for that one.
Yeah, and interesting thing with that is The Burn For You, it's probably the longest intro to a song. And obviously the radio single, they cut probably the first minute of that out. The Stairs is similar, obviously off X, where there's quite a long intro into it. But the Burn For You one probably stands out, where it really builds up, doesn't it?
Yeah, for sure. Can I just while we're on Burn For You, this is only a small thing, but when I was younger, I used to have a dual cassette recorder. And I must have borrowed the INXS swing cassette off someone and put it onto a blank tape for kids listening. That's what we had to do back then. Showing my age. There's one point when I was taping it that I must have accidentally pressed the pause button for like a second and then I released it again. So on my copy of Burn For You, right at the very start, there's a point where it goes to what was on the tape originally, which was Frankie Goes to Hollywood, Relax.
That's fine.
Well, my
The other day, if you watched it ever.
Well, you do look at it differently as a sort of
I
a
think
40, 50-year-old man than you do as a 14-year-old kid. You realise what's going on.
Yes.
And they didn't ban that. Amazing.
No.
Ew. How? Yes, let's get the images out of our head.
Well, there's a Brian De Palma movie. There's a Brian De Palma movie called Body Double that came out in '84 that plays the Relax film clip, and they only add to the legacy of its naughtiness. Put it that way.
Right, so.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we all had a T-shirt, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Frankie.
No.
Frankie says relax.
Frankie says relax. And you're all, and they were like 10-year-olds walking around to me. Relax then. Oh my God.
Hey, bit of a loose thread. You know, Jon Stevens covered Two Tribes back in the 90s, I think, as well, which was a Frankie song. But with yourself, what sort of songs, particularly, from a live setting, you probably saw some of these songs play live. Did it still connect to you to this particular day?
From a live perspective, I love the if you've seen the intro to Australia Made, the actual video where they got the scaffold going together, and that leads into Melting the Sun. I just think that's just absolutely fabulous. I just wonder if they had anything to do with that. It's so brilliant how they took the scaffolding, hitting down that boom, boom, and then it builds and builds and builds. The next thing, Michael's on the stage and that flashing lights, then it goes into the song. I think that's absolutely
marries well, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's almost tingles type thing. But I love Melting in the Sun. I sort of must say, like picking your favourite child. I'll say this to you: Face to Change is number 10, and then it depends what mood I'm in. It really, about the other 9 are just.
Yeah, I think I may have mentioned in the review that was the one that I just still probably can't really sort of get into, but they more than outweighed by the other sort of 9 remaining there. And I think my experience as a kid listening to this stuff was that I couldn't believe just how different every song was, and that became a bit of the hallmark. I think off Shabu Shabar, there are distinctive songs there, but then there are some songs that of the deeper tracks on Shabu that do blend into each other musically. Yeah. But just the sonics and the instrumentation, the production and the variation of these other songs on the swing, they were also different. Like a Burn For You is probably the most organic song with the acoustic guitar part to it, albeit the keyboards. But a song like The Swing is this big, massive sound. Original Sin's a funky sound, different producer. Center Mesh is very keyboard. Johnson's Airplane's out on a limb, doing everything different than any other.
We mentioned La Viz, by the way. No one's mentioned La Viz yet.
I was going to mention that because I think when I was listening to the review just this morning, I think, Hayden, you sort of said that you were surprised it didn't do better because you really liked that song. Correct me if I'm wrong there. And I'd be interested to know if you guys know, has anyone done a cover of Love Is? Because it is a really good quality song that I can imagine someone doing a cover of it.
What's interesting about that notion is it sounds 1984. And I think with the thing with the album, it does sound of its era. Now you can say it's dated, or you can say it is of its era and it captured the sound of its time. But a song like Love Is, what I say, you could update that now, tweak a bit of the keyboard, put a bit more guitar over it, modern day production, and you could give it to anyone, and it could be a hit. It's such a hook in it, the chorus is such a hook,
Yeah, but when we had Blair on from Don't Change, the tribute band, he says that was a really hard song to sing. Yeah, and Michael only did it once live as well.
It wasn't that it was hard, it's because the actual instruments just overpower the voice. The old voice is so low.
So low.
So you actually would need to play it almost acoustic to be able to hear the singer.
Well, it's a song that Michael, when you hear at the start, he really sings in a very low register.
Yeah.
Yes. And it builds.
Almost a spoken low register. And by the end of the song, he's taken it up. So this sort of this differential from the low to the high showcases his vocal.
The climb, Hayden.
The climb, the escalation.
Just while we're talking about Blair, did you see that they're on a bill with Jimmy Barnes?
And James Rayner.
Yes.
How cool is that?
Yeah.
That I would like to go to.
Mm.
Whereabouts is that?
So is it a cruise or is it a sort of a festival type thing, isn't it, I think?
Cruise. I think it's a cruise. It's a cruise?
I saved it today because I saw that and going, that'd be pretty.
I did a thingy.
That's it.
And rock the boat. So it is a cruise. Oh,
Yeah.
it's not till October.
That's okay. Well, if we digress for a moment, I mean, let's talk about the list a bit, because we had a couple of swing songs sort of on there. I do know that probably the most feedback I got from some people was Johnson's Aeroplane maybe being ranked a little high. Again, that was probably, without saying like a wanker, it was probably for the purists. And when I say the purists, I talk about the cover bands out there. I've met a lot of them who really rate and rank that song as a sort of a lot of cover bands play that live because it was a seminal song for them. I think musically it was a song that Mark Opitz had originally, and they didn't put on Shaboo. They saved it over for the swing. But was there anything on that list of 25 of the swing or anything else on there that you thought missed out or could have been on there? Or
I thought, you know what someone told me on YouTube? Because it's funny, the kind of thing comments. I was like, you missed Suicide Blonde, is that right? Was that Suicide Blonde in that list?
No.
Yeah.
No, I don't think it did.
And so I heard it. What do you mean, no Suicide Blonde? And I'm like, I was popping it.
You know what? You were copying it.
Right, yeah.
That's funny.
No, I'm not going to get into the Rock Roll Hall of Fame. I'm like, I just didn't respond.
Here's an interesting answer to that one, because a lot of the time when people ask me or text me, I said, oh, yeah, that was 26. To most people, it kept them happy. But with Suicide Blonde, I think the word suicide has damaged the perceptions of the band.
Yeah.
And weirdly enough, I was very surprised they played that live with Jon Stevens, that first gig where they played the Mercury Lounge. Having said all of that, the word suicide really was related to a hairdressing product.
Yeah.
Kylie Minogue, blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
Sometimes, like, AC/DC don't play A Long Way to the Top. They don't play that. They never played it since Bon, died, because it was sort of one of those sort of songs they thought, well, no, this is a Bond song. We don't want to do it. The fact with Suicide Blonde is that impact and social fabric and legacy and all that sort of stuff, great song, top 10 in America, etc. there. But it was just these other ones that sort of spoke louder, in terms of being in the public consciousness about that. I think we had Disappear in the top 25, didn't we? And By My Side in there, Off the Swing, I think we obviously had Original Sin in the top 5, I believe. From memory.
Number 5.
We put in, well, I don't think we put What I Say in, did we? Did we
What do you mean we? You mean you?
We did? Okay, we did.
No, it wasn't 24.
Let's just correct you there.
Okay. Hey, B,
24.
B, remember this, we work as a team, all right? We do it like that.
You know what's really interesting about Suicide Blonde, though, and particularly, say, 2 songs on the album The Swing. If you listen to Original Sin, it's the dun, 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 dun. That riff is in Suicide Blonde as well.
Yeah, I've heard a remix where they put Suicide Blonde, the riff, and Needed Tonight together that sounds similar.
It's the exact same chords, though. So Ian has been obviously looking at all the chords and the music, but with Suicide Blonde, it's like a EGA, I think it is. But then when they do that, they do that same riff. It's the exact same riff or same chord. That's really cool. And then the other one, and you actually see the songwriting aspect. And then the other one I think is I Sent a Message. If you look at this, they go dan dan dan. It's very similar to Elegantly Wasted. Same chords as well.
Yeah, right.
Hayden, did you also see who's the guy? Is it Taylor Hawkins, a guy from The Darkness? He does a song. He did a little thing about Lenny Kravitz's song TK421.
Oh yeah,
and it sounds a bit like Suicide Blonde, yeah.
Oh yeah. That was my first foray into understand that Lenny had a new song out when it's Justin Hawkins. I think Taylor's
Oh, that's it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Justin Hawkins, who's very funny. If you guys haven't seen Justin, Singer of the Darkness, he's very musically talented and savvy, and he can hear a song and play it on his guitar live, and he's very good with just his little 15-minute sort of podcast, little drops he does every couple of days.
All right, Hayden, I've got to stop you there. We've had a late comer to the podcast of Darren Jones.
Fresh from the cinemas, Darren, what have you gone to see?
Godzilla. Yeah.
Is it going to threaten the Academy Awards, that movie, at any time? Or?
No, it's I'm just always having a 10-year-old. Lost his seat second time.
We did announce your pending arrival. That would be on the call, and we've just got your lookalike. We found your doppelganger, Darren. We've got another Darren here. We've got Darren Joseph, not Darren Jones, and you both look a bit similar. Okay, I know we're a little bit
similar.
I know we're a little bit follically challenged on the top there. If I could be upfront, we have a very united front. Darren, originally from Melbourne, he's over in Perth. We've just got Dr. Jim, as you probably know, and we've also got Bretty from Tasmania. And we've been talking about all things the swing, and I guess we'll throw it to you. Tell us about the swing and what it meant for you as a young lad growing up in Australia.
Good friends of my parents had a daughter, Sharon, who was a couple of years older than me, and she's the one that opened the whole world up. She just handed me a cassette of the swing and said, listen to this. That was it. It's been 40-odd years since.
We spoke to other guys about songs that still resonate, some 40 years later, given this is the 40th anniversary. We know that sometimes songs can be a little bit thrashed on the radio at different times, but swing had such a depth in its catalogue in terms of its strength of an album. What songs to you still sort of connect with you this time many years later?
It's funny how I always find myself years later when I go back to these albums, always seem to be hanging on to the second half of them. And I do it with a lot of them. I still find Johnson's Aeroplane and Love Is What I Say is probably a couple of the two stronger songs that have really stood out over time. So yeah, I just think the album obviously Burn for You's late in the track listing and has its obvious ending with all the voices. I mean, the guys all way up there well. So I just find strength in the back end of their albums very consistent.
And one of the things which is interesting, we spoke a bit earlier about with everybody, was that these songs were played on radio almost like off the whole album. And I mean, we were in a singles era where you could buy your 45 vinyl and that sort of stuff, or your 33s and things. But these tracks, and as I think Brett mentioned earlier as well, the videos, there's about 9 of the songs are actually all, have a video attached to them. What's your memory of the media side and hearing these multiple tracks, not just singles at the time?
You incorporate this era as well with MTV. I think that had a big impact as well. I think it was just, whether it was luck or good management or both, the timing was pretty bloody good. And they sort of entered a really polished album into 84 when MTV was starting to sort of take off. And I think that's why maybe INXS remembered for their videos and forefront the video sort of game with singles. Well, I don't know if that's pure timing or pure good luck or both. They just hit the ground running in 84 and MTV was lucky enough to take off at the same time. So their exposure just grew sort of exponentially from that realm, just being opened up.
See new video music you can't see anywhere else. New interviews, new concerts, new guest EJ, new specials. There's always something new on MTV, 24 hours a day on cable TV. Too much. Yeah, too much. Never.
Too much is never enough.
Now, looking at my list here, B, I think I came in on the top 25. We had Original Sin at 5, Johnson's Aeroplane at 10, Burn for You at 20, and Love Is What I Say at, I think, 24.
Really? I thought it was higher than that.
Yeah. I mean, look, Johnson's Aeroplane one, you could probably flip anywhere within the 25. But I guess, for Australia particularly, and a lot of the guys would sort of recognise this album was so big. It was in the charts probably longer than Listen Like These. It was probably in the charts the equal amount of time to Kick in its scope. And really just gave that band this massive, Australian sort of, superstar status. And we said earlier, Darren Jones, that is, that it didn't translate to America given some of the political and lyrical content, but it is an album that we found America discovered after Kick.
Yeah, it's funny, because they sort of broke through with Shabu Shabar and played the US Festival, and they were kicking goals with the One Thing and touring with that amount. I guess maybe just the workload in Australia and Japan, where it really where the swing broke through, maybe the workload was so big that they didn't have time to go promote it in America as well. I just think it was so big elsewhere that obviously time's a factor. And yeah, it's one of those things, because you look at before and after the swing, they're heavily into America on Shabu, and then obviously they go straight in, hitting the ground running with What You Need at number 5 in America for the album after that, but there's not much in between. So,
well, I think the interesting thing, we spoke about a band that probably weren't very good at playing live, and that's Frankie Goes to Hollywood before, who at the same year had a song called Relax. And we won't go into the subtext to that. We'll sure everyone can draw a line and extrapolate and get to where you want to go to. But if there was ever a time that a song and a video should have translated the band into the stratosphere in America, you think Original Sin would have done that. If you go back in a time capsule, imagine if the swing blew up, what that meant for Listen Like These might have been the next Kick, and then Kick. Imagine if Kick would have been the next Listen Like These after that. Like
they might have. You know what
I mean? Like if you had had that 4 album in a row, Swing, Listen Like These, Kick, X would have just sold as much as the others because of just the history of the prior 4. And I feel like INXS always had a bit of bad luck in their career relative to the peak bands of U2 and Def Leppard and some of these other bands of that commercial sense at that time, where, they didn't quite get the leg up or any favours come their way. It was always grit and hard work and touring,
How long was it in the top 50 in Australia, the swing?
Over 2 years.
Yeah, I was going to say, it'd be a long time. Yeah. They just kept on producing single after single.
And then video.
That long
video. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So, from the point of view of its potential, it really should have been an album that, as I said, springboarded them into sort of, particularly America, and then Europe would have followed, which would have laid the groundwork. But unfortunately, that's sort of where it sort of landed, alternatively, for them.
Can I throw a theory at you?
Yeah.
Purely a theory.
Yeah.
But I mean, you got to think, when they went to America and they toured with Adam Ant, and they were trying to break through there, through their whole career, they've always been criticised for that early move to America by us back at home. Did they go too soon? Did they really, earn their stripes to be able to go and do that? And maybe the swing, with how big it was in Australia, the markets here, I don't know. Do they come home and do the swing and concentrate their efforts here to solidify their Australian base, to try and maybe sort of get rid of that theory of, did we go to America too early?
They went to America, really, if listen, Shabu came in 82, and before you know it, they were January 83 playing the Arts Festival and getting chart hits in America. You could argue the one thing came quite quick for them, and American success came quite quick on the back end of their first tour. The other part, which you say is quite interesting, because I look at this album a bit like Powderfinger's international album. I think it's called Internationalist, I think. That took them after Double Allergic, where they went from a double platinum album to probably a 5 times platinum album. And the size of the swing album probably afforded the band and each band member money and a home and security and the touring dividends and revenue that they got from Australia. Again, maybe diminished the amount of time they put into it overseas. I just think that Original Sin's such a great song, with Daryl Hall and backup vocals, the song itself, the production of the title. If ever a song could have given the band a cheap, that is, low investment output of physical grit, that is just a video clip in Hong Kong with a great song, versus a year's touring behind trying to sell a song. MTV was there at that time that could have just taken them to the next level. But I think MTV may have sort of curtailed, and certain radio stations curtailed Original Sin's exposure.
Yeah. I mean, you think Nile Rodgers and all being from America could have dragged that song into that market.
Yeah. But even back then, there's no internet back then, and there are people who even to this day don't know it's Daryl Hall, and they don't even know who Noel Rodgers was. And even back then, he was with Chic, and Chic was a disco band, and and the gravitas of that wasn't there. I mean, nowadays, you look at the rappers who put 3 people on their songs. Like if you open up the Billboard charts today, it's not one solo artist; it's 3 guest singers and 14 songwriters, and it's featuring this person and featuring that person. Could you imagine INXS featuring Daryl Hall on that song, and we called it a duet, and we flicked little John Oates, the porn star, away, and we just had Daryl Hall, and we had INXS on there, like INXS Original Sin featuring Daryl Hall. I mean, Chris Murphy, maybe we could have put that on there and had Daryl Hall and put Daryl in the film clip.
Yeah.
On the back of the motorbike with Michael B.
You just got me thinking about, is it Dua Lipa as well? Like she sampled an INXS song, and now she's sampling Kylie.
Right.
And dressing up as Kylie. It's like, it's all reusing, isn't it?
Yeah. But look, back then, there was, you had your video. That was sort of your international marketing. I mean, it's how Australia probably broke ABBA and broke Blondie originally, is we put their songs on a show called Countdown and played them here because they were overseas artists, and it was a cheap way of advertising their presence and their look without having to tour. That's really what a video was in a way. It's like it's a visual promotion of a song.
And we had Tube.
Enough from me. Let's open up a little bit there and go, okay, is there any song on the swing that maybe has lost its luster over 40 years, which you might skip now because of, I don't know, you're sick of it, or maybe it doesn't resonate with you, but maybe when you were younger you did like? Now, Darren Jones, you're smiling like
a...
Well, it's only because it's on a cause of a bit of controversy, but I mean, straight away argued the double-edged sword that is Original Sin, flogged to death. And it's not the band's fault.
No.
Talk about commercial rate. That's another whole episode on its own. Top 10 most flogged songs of all time. And that's sort of starting to get there at some point. I could easily listen to a live version over the studio on the album version. I like the way that the songs were later reinterpreted live with a much more rockier feel, because you'll always remember Tim saying that it's probably one of his least favourite albums, because he believed it was so overproduced that it's just too clean and too produced. So he likes, that's why I think you hear a much better version of it live later on in especially Wembley with Send a Message and Original Sin, there's a lot more guitar incorporated into the live versions of those songs, which I think helps add a bit of meat and it helps, make it a bit more INXS-y.
Yeah, that was a good version. I sent a message to Wembley, actually.
Yeah.
Well,
when you look at the studio version of that album, that's another song I would say that I could probably miss on the album, listening to the CD, is Send a Message.
it is very sort of synthy, tinny, sort of thin, isn't it? Sound. They beef it up, with the Wembley version and things.
There's a really good version I've got on the channel in 1997 when Michael does Original Sin, and the feedback I've had on that is just phenomenal. They just love it because it's beefier, it's funky, rockier, but it's more guitar sound rather than that synthy sound that you can probably hear.
Well, as we said a bit earlier, the sound was of its time, that 84 period. I mean, let's look at the artists around that time. I'll throw these names out with questions without notice and see if we get a smile or a slightly embarrassed look. If you're embarrassed, it means you did buy one of their singles or their T-shirts. I'll throw this name out. Nick Kershaw.
Negative. Yes.
Okay, let me throw this name.
I like it.
We mentioned a bit earlier. What about, well, actually, I did mention this one. Howard Jones.
Negative.
Okay, the Models from Australia.
Yeah, my uncle.
Yeah. Okay. Around that time, we got the Eurythmics.
Yep.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
We've got. Remember Marilyn?
Oh my gosh, he was a bit of a
Culture Club.
wonder, wasn't he? Culture Club. Yeah.
Culture Club.
Dreadful.
Careful.
No, dreadful.
Oh, dreadful. I thought you said careful. I thought I was hitting a rough note there. I mean, if you think of this era of music, it was very produced. It was very keyboard centric. It was that new post new wave synth sort of movement. It was sort of just, you had that 1981 where you had Duran Duran and Ultravox and these sort of bands.
Gary Newman.
This is where technology really just played its part, sort of in music, and it became a sort of certain thing that there were bands who couldn't play guitar suddenly were becoming musicians because the keyboard gave them that gateway to things.
Although, was it Flock of Seagulls? They came out as quite a synthy band, but when you saw them live, bloody hell, they could play those guitars really well.
Yeah. I do. Yeah, they were sort of 80 to 83 around that time. Definitely part of that era. I mean, a lot of this stuff was out of that Euro sort of synthy sort of sound. I mean, Simple Minds were probably forerunners and really leaders of the pack at that time. I mean, often U2 used to say that Simple Minds were that good, they were 5 albums ahead of us, in terms of just that, era of sound, like albums like Empire and Dance and Sparkle in the Rain and Somewhere in Summertime, that song, I mean, they had all these great sort of synthy sort of sounds around then that influenced a lot of people. When we talk about videos and film clips, I mean, there were 9 of them. With questions without notice to anyone in particular, what sort of video to you is sort of memorable to this day that stands out to you guys?
I sent a message, I think, probably the first I saw.
Yeah, okay.
I remember Original Sin. Original Sin was a slower burn for me originally. Didn't take long, I've got to say, but oddly, I can still remember John in it, and him, he used to put his hand underneath where John was hitting the drum, because they were obviously miming, and Gary would go like that.
Yes, Gary was the counting guy, wasn't he?
Wasn't actually hitting the drum. Right, just one of those things that stuck with me. And just wearing the headphones.
Everyone knows the story with the video clip, why they're wearing all the cans and stuff, because that temple, and I've been to that temple in Tokyo, they weren't allowed to make any noise. So they had to wear that and pretend to play the video clip. So as much as I bag maybe not being able to tolerate much the studio version of it, it's always been special to me because I've actually been to that temple in Tokyo and stood where they made that clip, and it's a bit of a surreal experience. And walking around the side, and you'll see the video clip where they sort of walk at the end with those Japanese sort of wooden shoes. That's at the side of the temple, and to walk there 40 years after they made the clip was pretty cool. But that temple hasn't changed a lot at all inside. It's still pretty much the same. You stand there, you can actually see the video, like you can see the backdrops of when they did it. It hasn't changed at all. It's really bizarre.
Great.
INXS have had a very interesting relationship with Japan. I think it started with this album. If you think, I mean, obviously the original Sin film clip, I think, is Hong Kong. You've got Send the Messages in Japan. You've got Johnson's Aeroplane that has those sort of rice field type sort of Japanese, Japanese gardens lyric, and then it leads to 1994. I think they played the great musical experience concert there up in the big monasteries there with Bob Dylan and Joni Mitchell and Bon Jovi and a whole bunch of artists, which was a big thing. So I think it's held a very special place for them. What other videos, guys? Anyone else want to share some video experiences of what stood out for the album?
I'm going to revisit a lot of the videos because it's been a while since I've watched some of these on this album. So, yeah, I'm going to sort of revisit. I mean, I remember the original Sin, and as you said, I Sent a Message videos played a lot in Australia. They're sort of burned into our memory. But, yeah, I want to go revisit some of those.
Who likes the sort of the historical sort of, you know, it's sort of a bit like the Rites of Passage video, Burn For You. It shows Cairns, Australia, Townsville.
Mackay.
It crosses to London, the population, the band on the move, the band growing. Richard Lowenstein's first video, it's got this sort of home footage / feel to it / this bigger thing, like it's sort of a sign of things to come, like a band on the move.
That's the video maybe that shows you the link or the reason why they maybe didn't go to America, choose that time, because they chose to go to Europe instead, and maybe they thought they broke through with Shabu, it's time to expand to Europe, market lives one, and maybe that's the reason they didn't really concentrate on America that fell. Who knows?
B, any video for you that sort of connects and stuff like that? Unfortunately, there's not as many dance moves and some pulsating rhythms and pirouettes and things like that from Michael in this one, but
well, I say the video is quite nice though, isn't it? It's all blacked out and it's more visual just on Michael, which is quite nice.
But what that generally is, it's that classic one, a bit like Mystify, where, you know, when you're 5, 6, 7 singles / videos, promos into an album, they cut and paste footage live with some post-production stuff and give it a visual sort of boost to keep the album in the consciousness. Which sort of leads me to the next one. Does anyone have a memory, or does anyone have their collection of their Decadance little packets of the 6 characters of INXS, and you were collecting them and things? I know it was a big thing at the time. Like, I remember at school, one of the kids came to school and he had the very rare one. I can't remember. I don't think it was a Kirk. It might have been a John or Michael or whatever, but they were like, back in our footy card collecting days, there was always a rare one or two. And these Decadance little ones you collected was like it was like a 6-7 EP thing, wasn't it? With Jackson as the cover song with Jenny Morris and the band.
Brett, didn't you win one? One of our
No, I didn't. I would have definitely entered. I think the only thing I got, I bought the T-shirt.
Is there a Decadance memory of having owning one of those? Because if you think about this, like that just kept the album charting again, didn't it? Like 8 months later, they brought out a little Decadance EP where there was remixes and extra tracks and things. But anyone got some memories with that?
I remember I was slightly disappointed with Jackson.
Well, yeah.
Elaborate on that, because as a kid, it's probably this sort of country and western where Michael's hamming it up a bit. It just doesn't sound like our band.
No.
But as a more mature guy now, and hearing going further and knowing the history of the song and what it was about, do you listen to it differently now or have a different appreciation?
I haven't listened to it for a long, long time. Funny, I was looking at the B-side today, and there's that 6 Knots, which is on, I think, the Swing and Other Stories, I think, like this. It just brings back so many memories just flooding when you hear that. Quite amazing. And then the end of it, John Forrester's other B-side, You Never Used to Cry.
Oh,
yes. And yeah, that you think, it's just the flood of memories that come back from listening to that is just incredible.
Yeah.
Because I played that DVD to death. Not DVD.
Darren Judge, do you remember the Countdown Music Awards? I think obviously INXS script the pool that night, which was equivalent to the ARIAs really back then. And I was reading something just yesterday, which was quite interesting. At that night of the awards, they were sort of starting to bring in the ARIA awards or some ARIA Special Achievement Awards and things, which were sort of being blended in. But I read a little bit of an article saying that INXS fans and Uncanny X-Men's fans started punching on or whatever that night over some awards. So at that night, I thought it was the band, but it was fans at the awards that night, of which meant that they then decided to separate these ARIA awards for something later. I don't know what the issue was, but they played Jackson that night, and I think Sting was presenting the best album, a lot of the awards to Michael that night, and Jenny and Michael got up in their cowboy hats, I think, and sung at the end, didn't they?
Yeah, great.
Didn't Eurogliders won the single? I think.
What's that?
I think Eurogliders might have won the single that year.
I think Song of the Year, I got a feeling Midnight Oil might have won for Power and the Passion, and INXS won for the Swing album. But they might have had best, most sold single or something like that. I think various categories, but
pretty sure Eurogliders.
A strong year for Australian music, you know?
Yeah.
I think one thing with Jackson, I think, Hayden, is that you actually see, when you look back and now where Andrew's at with his country music, you can actually see that's the beginning of it. And it's not that one. He did, remember when he did Heaven Sent, like his own version, that country version? It's like,
the Waltz version,
just see. And then there was other stuff he did with Jenny Morris, like, he had that in you, mate. Where they had it in Don't Change, had that country.
Yes.
I think it's the gliding version or something of Heaven Sent or whatever there, where where it really started as a country song, and they probably what you would call inaccessified it, didn't they? They took it into the factory and said, over to you, Tim, put that in there. And I mean, that's a great thing about music. You can play different versions of the same song. And we've seen the band do that with Beautiful Girl, the two different versions with Pat Monahan from Train and the actual original version that Michael sings. It's the same song.
Can you imagine what my brother would have really sounded like? You know, the one with Jon Stevens. I don't believe it would have sounded the way he released it.
Which one?
My brother, that's on his solo album, and Andrew Farris. That would have been a rockier version, I think.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Or a ballad or something.
I mentioned that to you last week. Do you remember about Jon Stevens and Andrew Farris wrote My Brother, and Andrew has now released it.
But music's interesting. I saw the on TV the John Farnham documentary, you know, The Voice or whatever it's called. But they were showing his version back in 1980 of the Beatles song Help. And for some of us in Australia would know that, where John was going through this transition from being the teeny bopper to a mature adult singer. And, you know, the song Help from the Beatles is quite a boppy sort of insincere vocal. You know, it's help me if you can. It's quite boppy and less painful, whereas John Farnham sings this really painful ballady version of it, and you can hear the angst in it. This is the great thing about music. You can take a song and twist it around in three different ways. I mean, even Rob Thomas, the original Sin version, you know, of Redux version on that album, you know, puts a different bent on things. I mean, that whole covers of INXS's own songs really does that to an interesting sort of format.
And look at Don't Change. It became a country song.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice. That's actually a country song when you think about it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the swing as well. It always reminds me of going into a Western.
Oh, really? Okay.
You know, actually, the song itself.
The song, don't you get that? At the very beginning, it's got that, whoa.
The album title, personally, I think is one of their best album titles, you know, The Swing. You know, it has various connotations and conjunctions.
Yes.
How do you guys feel about the actual name of the album?
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I think,
You look through the track list even now. I mean, what else would you call it?
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, and it's, again, you talk about an era of no internet, and remember, this is still the era of no CD as well. We've discussed this before with other stuff, with vinyl, with the A and the B side. Track listings were really, really important back then.
Yeah.
And you will always remember that The Swing was the last song you heard on the A side before you flipped it. So they like to hit you in the guts before you flip it, and then they give you a bit of a reprieve, and then on the B side, well, it finishes with Burn For You at the end before it goes into all the voices. So all of these songs, I mean, you put that vinyl on, and from 1 to 4, it's just in your face, slapping you about stupid Australian rock. And then you sort of take a breath.
What's song 6, Darren?
Johnston's Aeroplane.
Yeah.
So you're sort of taking a breath, putting it over to B-side, and you get a little bit of a reprieve with Johnston's. It's a nice little ballad, and before you know it, you're back into it.
Yeah.
So,
good point. You said twice about Burn For You being song 9. It really is interesting because often bands front load their best songs, but I mean, this is obviously a great album across the board, but putting such a great song like Burn For You at song 9 is quite a brave move because not everybody makes it to song 9, albeit in those days we used to plonk it on side 1, flip it to side 2, tape or vinyl, and you would actually absorb the whole album and things that, you know, as an experience.
Unless that song early on wasn't earmarked as a single, they had their idea of original sin leading into I Send a Message and having their songs picked out, and maybe the market dictated that became a single and a hit later on, and maybe it wasn't even on their radar. This is just something we talk about in hindsight, which you don't have. So maybe the market pulled that out of that album, and all of a sudden it became a single and took off against what they thought was going to happen.
I reckon you're right, Darren, because they had that massively long intro into the song, and I don't think they would have written a song like that thinking it was going to be a single, if that makes sense. I know
the record company cuts that to 3 minutes 20 and enough to fit on a 7-inch.
Yeah. And controversial one, let's talk about the album cover. The interiors of the album obviously quite interesting, and led with Philip Mortlock, we did quite a deep dive into that. B's holding up the album cover. Now, I want to have the lens of 40 years later as our criteria here, everybody. Can we put that up a bit closer, B, the front cover?
The front cover.
For everyone to see. All right, let's go around the panel. Tell us what you think about the cover 40 years later.
I'll start if you like. I do like it. It's a picture of the whole band in there. It's got the white as your background with certain elements of pulling through of what they want the eyes to look to. So, yeah, I like it.
Yep. Okay. All right.
I can't answer it because I've stated that so many times in my life that to me that's just it's deliberately printed on my brain. I can't imagine it any other way. So I mean, I love every aspect of it. I think Kirk did a lot of the photography there. Is that right?
Actually, I don't know if this is right or wrong because you don't know who you talk to on the internet because they're all behind keyboards. But someone was saying, oh, that wasn't Philip Mortlock that did that. It was somebody called Neil, and he'd been on a travel, and it's a lot of his travel photographs, not Kirk.
I think Kirk's credited with some of the photos as well.
Yeah.
But I mean, as a structure, what about you, Darren Jones? What's your take on the cover 40 years later?
Kodak, slides, pencils. It's pretty relevant to the time, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just it's a screenshot. I mean, the frame around the band's photo is a symbol of them being captured, but also with the technology that they had at the time. And that's how they captured it. I don't think it's much different, but added technology when they did 93 with Full Moon and they're on the, some at the back of the band, all as a group sitting there posing for that. Not the same sort of thing, but just different format, different technology. I think it just captures the early 80s. I just think it's cool. It's still cool.
I agree with Darren. It's got that very 80s feel to it. I think a couple of things I like to look at on albums, like, I think was this the first time where they had the whole band was on the front cover?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
In Shabooh Shoobah, they're under the sheet, but that's more on the inside. So that,
Yeah.
but saying when you would look at that cover and go, this is the band. They can actually see that. And the other thing I always like to look at is, and I think INXS has actually been, they experimented with their kind of logo look, so it's probably closer to, it's almost like a narrow version of the Shabooh Shoobah logo. Yeah, it's one I look at the whole band's on there and their logo, so which obviously evolved to what's become this sort of, what was it, the elegantly wasted logo that became viral now.
It makes them look like they're travellers, though, doesn't it? It's not they're just not from Australia. It makes them a bit more international. I love the quirkiness inside and the actual little pictures, and they've drawn all over them, and there's little cutouts that just make them a bit more independent looking, a bit more interesting, not your average band.
Yeah.
I think from memory, Tim's down and look at the camera, I think.
My main criticism of it is the sort of not looking at the camera, looking at different angles, sort of whatever. It's got a bit of a sort of an ABBA / orchestral maneuvers in the dark. I mean, even the look of the band, they look like a lot of other bands at that particular sort of time. And then, I mean, it's a bit artistic the way they're looking at the camera, whatever. There, it is of it. It is a dated pose, but it is of its time. Yeah, I think that's all I probably would say. You think back to some of the clips around that particular time, and a lot of there was a lot of film clips of bands doing that at that time in film clips and acting all a bit obscure. Even it's a bit like To Look At You, isn't it? Where they're all acting a little bit arty-farty, in the To Look At You film clip. I think there's enough going on, particularly in the inside, when you open up the covers and all the different sleeves and things that make it interesting and things.
Well, interesting, when we would have put all our albums side by side, and then you would have seen that it's actually like written in pencil.
Yes.
It's not graphic. Yeah.
And look, I think when you also you're making your way through the ranks, one of the things you sort of owe to yourself and your listeners potentially is it's hard to sell 6 members in a band than it is to sell 4. You look at the Beatles and some of the most amazing bands around the world. I mean, there are 4 people in a band and everyone it's like a character. What you are trying to do as a band in the early days is market who's who by having each person represented in a particular way. I think one of the criticisms when we go forward to the Welcome to Wherever You Are album cover is that there was no one on the cover, and the cover was quite obscure and was part of that grungy, less is more era where, even Pearl Jam had a sheep or a ram on the cover of their Versus, their second album, and bands weren't even putting themselves on the cover. So it was almost about demarketing versus increased marketing. But yeah, I just thought I'd throw that out there as a thought,
It's actually, Welcome was an effort to increase marketing because stupid us went out and bought all 3 formats because it was a different cover for all 3. So we all got sucked into buying all 3.
And they eventually did the one where they're out in the desert walking through in their suits in the cover.
The Australian version of the cover. Yeah.
Yeah, Darren, Jones, while we've got you, we thought we would just like to ask a couple of questions from a prior episode. We know that you were quite present around sort of Jon Stevens, sort of, involving himself with the band, and there's nothing like having an eyewitness at the time who was sort of around at that particular period. As you know, probably from my experience and from Beat doing our last episode about John, we draw a few parallels, extrapolate a few thought processes that are there, dive deep on some quotes and just experience at the time. tell us from the ground floor, what your thoughts were of that period and, what we discussed on the episode and any gaps that we didn't fill in as thoroughly as you know.
Where do we start? I think for me, it was all so emotive and so much passion because you got to watch these guys be able to get out of bed and function again. They deserved it. They spent their ass, as much as Michael did, they all equally sweated and bled and drowned and survived. So, I never thought they had anything to answer for to the Australian public, and I don't think they ever felt they needed to. It was the media that drove all that, and that's not a story for another day. But, the criticism they may or may not have got from proceeding, I mean, the only thing I would say in relation to that is that it was unwarranted, and you saw other bands not really cop the same amount of flack that they did after Michael passed. I mean, look at DC and bands like that. I think it was only, Back in Black in 1980, the record company pushed AC/DC to get it. They didn't really care that Bonner died, and they basically had 6 or 8 weeks, and that was out after Bonner died. So could you imagine if INXS had released an album 8 weeks after Michael died because they appeared to not have given a shit? That would have went down real well. But they put up with years of this crap. And I think the slowly approach with the opening of the Stadium Australia was great. I mean, I was in Paris at the time, and Mary Woods and I just happened to be in the same place at the same time. So she flew back to Australia for that concert. So Mary was there for that. But Terence was good. It was cathartic. I think they needed to do that regardless of the outcome or publicity that come from it. It was just a matter of get your bloody ass back on stage and plug the goddamn thing in. So they did that, and then it sort of started a snowball from that. I thought, okay, Tim Rice, for some people, would have thought, well, that's a bit left of field. But again, it was just a process where they didn't have any pressure on them to get up and perform their own songs. They got up and just done the Jesus Christ Superstar stuff and a few others, and One Night in Bangkok. And, Kirk sang its song out of the blue. And it was just something for them to really do without they didn't need a frontman for that tour. And that was great. Tim Rice was a great experience. It was really good for them. And that was the birth of Jon Stevens. So, I noticed towards the end of that tour, he started turning up and was side stage, backstage. And that's how basically by the time we got to Adelaide on the Tim Rice tour, management said to me, get your ass back to Sydney because the Mercury Lounge and the Metro shows had been arranged. And so I actually didn't go to the Western Australian leg of the Tim Rice tour. I cut it off just to get to Sydney, just to oversight for Davo the logistics stuff in making sure those shows were sort of on schedule and going pretty well. So, I mean, Jesus, the Mercury Lounge, I think the casino there, the people that own that place, or the management of that place, were absolutely terrified of their insurance because I think the venue was supposed to hold 800 or 900 or something. And then we jammed about 14 or 1,500 people in there and you just couldn't move. So between gigs like Mercury Lounge, the Metro, I mean, there was openings we did in Sydney at little pubs. I remember the Civic Hotel, there was an opening there, and doing stuff for Absolute Vodka and a whole bunch of crap during those years. And eventually, obviously, down at Jindabyne, there was those couple of shows at Jindabyne, which were so much fun. I got in trouble for stealing all of Tim's guitar picks off the side of the stage there. I thought they were used, but they were new. I had to own up there. It was a mystery, but I owned up.
But B's looking at you like, have you got any spare in your stash?
In fact, I've got one from Jindabyne here.
Ah, have you?
Yeah, I have. A used Tim one from Jindabyne. I think it would have been a lot different with when Michael passed away if Murphy had still been managing.
I think it would have been. And it's something I'd like Darren Jones to maybe answer because, look, obviously they didn't have Chris and they probably had I think Dave Edwards at the time, etc. there, and Jon Stevens getting involved, it was one of those sort of situations which I think, as we said previously, it was probably a healing scenario getting Jon sort of involved with the band. But Darren's right in the sense the media backlash at the time, the band were dealing with Michael passing, they were dealing with the innuendo of how he passed, and they're dealing with the legacy of what they're going to do after he passed. It was like a trifecta or so. Plus, there was negative stuff about the band before Michael passed. So they just never really were given any real sort of hall pass. There was no real deep sympathy or empathy that outside the first week after Michael died, the band seemed to get a hall pass from the greater media. Darren, I'll throw it to you on that sort of notion.
Yeah, tough question. Chris had his way of doing things. He was a tight leash sort of guy and didn't like to relinquish too much control. I mean, the guys were a lot more involved themselves in running the ship for a few years there with John and stuff. There was weekly band meetings with Dave religiously sitting around discussing stuff.
Was Jon Stevens that healing sort of, person for the band? Like, he's such a positive guy, John. He's just such a, got a big heart, and I just couldn't have helped but feel he was such a fan of the band. But I just thought he must have helped heal the band's wounds to some degree,
I think John was like having a mate turn up and play, and there was never any pressure with John stepping in. John had his own identity for obvious reasons with Noiseworks. John was already established. It's not like he was there for any ulterior motive. It just fit. It just worked, and it was recognised early on that it worked. I can remember when we got to Melbourne on the Tim Rice tour, when it had been established that we were coming back to the Mercury Lounge. We were already in the studio, like just renting studio space to rehearse. John was just really good about everything. He didn't know all the words, and he used to have this massive art book that he wrote all the songs in, would have all of the performer in front of him and turn the page, to learn the songs. I think his vocal range was spot on to be able to replicate without trying to be like Michael. And I think the main reason John White works so well is because the media and the critics and all these people that want to keep throwing stones didn't really have an argument with John because he wasn't pretending to be anyone else. It was Jon Stevens. He'd already proven himself, and he'd already been around the scene with these boys for a decade, cutting their teeth in front of pubs and clubs. And so John didn't have to stand there and explain to anyone who he was. And the media really didn't have an argument about comparing him to Michael, even though that still happened. It was negated somewhat, I think, by just his own presence and his own persona.
Now, last question sort of on this, and we'll sort of tie things up in a moment. But, obviously it didn't ultimately, kick on, pardon the pun, after 2003. And there was obviously at that particular time, I think management, whatever, they kept putting out greatest hits and best ofs, and the band, kept sort of, I guess, doing sort of little tours here and there. And they did obviously do America and Latin America and things, and then Night of the Proms. But, John obviously wanted to record more. There was a sense or maybe a rumour that maybe the songwriting chemistry between Andrew and Jon Stevens wasn't as high as it should have been. Could you add anything to that or anything substantial to that?
I've heard those rumours. It's probably not far from the truth, to be honest. There was never any animosity.
No.
I just think there had to have been some hurdle that they just obviously at the time couldn't get over with getting back into the studio. And especially, they'd already done a single. They'd already done Get Up as a single. So it's not like they hadn't recorded anything. They had actually done something. So who knows?
There were tracks like Sugar and Hungry that were playing in America and Latin tour and things too, that Hungry went on to become a song on Switch, one of the great songs on Switch, really. So there was obviously some recording and songwriting processes, to which even B mentioned earlier one of the songs off Andrew's solo album there, that Andrew and John wrote together. So it would have been great to see it kick on, furtherly, but obviously they went a different way and John went a different way.
Yeah, they pursued the rock star after that, and that's the next chapter.
All right, well, let's bring this puppy home. We tie things up, B, with the swing. I thought we would go with a bit of a bang today. All right, we're going to go out with the quintessential, unassailable, number one song off the swing that you take to your desert island, and you have to eliminate 9 other songs from your swing album. You can only take one with you to that desert island. Brett Williams, we're going to go with the new ball for you down in Tassie. Okay, can you name the one song now, not in 1984, I'm talking now, that goes with you to that desert island with that one track only contribution?
Love is what I say.
All right. B's done a little bit of a clap. Darren Joseph in Perth, okay? Have you got that one song?
Yeah, I'd have to go with The Swing. For me, it just gives goosebumps, and I just love it.
Okay, the title track, interesting. Dr. Jim, I think you can hear me there, Dr. Jim. Have you got a song?
Yeah. Send a message, mate. I sent a message. The album tells you that I'm sending a message to the international world.
No. And for our listeners who can't see this, Jim's gone dark on this video.
He's in this car. He's on his way home.
He sent a message with the hands free.
I didn't want to leave. I want to continue the conversation.
That's all right. He's sending a message.
All right, Jim.
Sending a message from the hands free. B, we'll throw to you. Have you got a song there that is your...
Just one.
One.
Well, it has to be Love Is What I Say.
All right. Okay, Darren Jones, we'll go through to you.
It's the one, there's 10 songs. We've heard them a million times, and there's only one song that still will give you goosebumps in Michael's delivery, and it's that powerful when he hits the chorus in Love Is What I Say. And that still hits you the way he sings that song. I think vocally out of all those songs.
That's a really interesting way to put it. Gives you goosebumps. And
it does.
Yeah.
I'm getting goosebumps thinking about getting goosebumps.
Well, yeah. But this is the thing about music 40 years later, that if a song can give you goosebumps, 40 years later, isn't that one of the great things about sort of music as a general rule, that can still make you feel something, even though you've maybe heard it so many particular times? And, if any song can do that, it's obviously a legacy of its strength.
We were on about that you don't play Face the Change. I played it earlier, and just hearing Michael's voice, that gave me goosebumps, because it was hearing him sing something I hadn't heard for such a long time, because I've always just overlooked that song. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure throughout our post-editing and production on this, B's going to put some real little snippets from different things along the way. I think we'll put an extra 12-inch mega mix version of Jackson over Brett's a bit earlier. I'm sure we'll float his boat no end.
Look out, Jackson Town.
Hayden, what's yours? What's your song?
Love Is What I Say, particularly when the Mystified documentary came out and they did the soundtrack with that and stuff. But it's probably the song that was least played in my youth that's most played now off the album. I think musically, despite it being played lots and lots and lots, I still think Original Sin is a really wacky, interesting musical masterpiece of a song. I think if I had to look at it overall, I think that song is the legacy song that I've rediscovered and like again. You go through like relationships, you fall in love out of songs and things, but it's got a salsa rhythm thing at the end, and it's got some really interesting vocal, things going on, and there's got the hooks there with Niall, it's got the vocal with Daryl. Daryl's high-pitched vocal.
Hayden, you were only supposed to pick one,
Well, it is the same. Talk about the one song. I'm getting waffling about this, but if you think about it, Michael's 23 when he recorded that, and his vocal probably is better later on hitting the high notes of Original Sin than it was then. So Daryl's a handy guy to have in the chorus then. So right.
So Original Sin or what? Love Is What You Say.
Well, the Original Sin is the one.
Okay.
That's what I say is a special part, But
very unusual for you to give a long answer.
That's true.
Two facts that I think are substantial in relation to the swing. We talked about this at the start, but the swing remained in the top 100 for over 100 weeks. When the Never Tear Us Apart miniseries came out, of all the albums that INXS have released, the swing re-entered into the top 50, number 14 when that
that's a good fact.
Yeah,
that sort of says and gives strength to the argument.
Pound for pound, population size at the time, its chart accreditation at the time, its cultural impact. It's their biggest album down here. Kick probably sold more and all those type of things there, etc. there, but it's probably their most famed sort of album sort of in our market. And that's not to take away from any of the other albums, but it's just probably the one that has that special place in people's hearts, where it transcended the artistic success plus the commercial success, I guess, and brought them into the consciousness. And to think of the songs and the singles, it's still their most successful bunch of singles in this country. We've had a number one hit, 2 number 3s, and then another top 40 track. Whereas even off Kick, they didn't quite get that depth of they had hits, but they weren't number ones, etc. There's a couple of top 10s, a couple of top 20s off that album. So again, that's an interesting addition to that, Darren. What was your second point, Darren? Or did you make it to...
Well, we didn't even touch on the fact of how influential VHS was back then, with no YouTube and whatever, but the whole release of the Swing and Other Stories, which added a visual element, I think, maybe for the first time, for the band, for people to actually sit at home, put something in the VHS player and watch something different from the band apart from just listening to the CD. You get to see them, and all of a sudden you're in their world and backstage.
And to see how good looking they were.
Yeah.
We had good videos. You had all the videos on there and a couple of other sort of tracks and things. And it was coming off that 1983 sort of Michael Jackson era where Thriller became a sort of a thing where you went home from school and, if the 9-minute, Thriller, film clip was on, it was like required watching, and the notion of video, and visual, medium and media was really that equivalence at that time to what, TikTok is now. these other platforms and things like that. So it's really interesting that you're right there, Darren. It's every year it takes advantage of the mediums and distribution platforms that it has. And VHS, video was that big cultural medium at the time that really coincided with the album release, which is a really good point. I guess to tie things up, I just want to thank everybody for jumping on. It's been great to sort of do this, and just reminds us, we've got to do a little bit more of it with our patrons. Particularly, we thank you all for your support for the show and what you do, both in listening and contributing financially, and just coming on today because, ironically, it's 40 years since the swing, but as some of you know, I think yesterday, 27 years since Elegantly Wasted. They have there's lots of anniversaries in INXS. Look, again, tying it all up, I want to thank everyone for coming on today, giving up a bit of their time. We'd love to do it again. We'd love to do it again with some other patrons also too at future points. We'd love to do it again with each of you guys, coming on. Some of you have been on before. Some of this is your rookie appearance. We hope you've enjoyed it. This will be coming out this weekend, I assume, all good things being equal. Thanks for jumping on, everybody.
Thanks for having us.
Bye.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
All right, now, B, we're going to go with a tribute song today, but we're going to let a guest pick one of these, and we think there's been some consensus going into a little bit earlier, so we've come up with a track that, Brett, is in your wheelhouse. We'll let you share this one and just remind listeners what it is and why it's great.
Yeah, this is INXS's live version of Melting in the Sun, as featured in Australia Made.
All right, everybody, well, it's a goodbye from me.
Goodbye from Brett.
It's a goodbye from Darren Joseph in Perth.
It's a goodbye from Darren Jones in Sydney.
And it's a goodbye from B. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.